Lots of water around many parts of Australia, including in New South Wales. Thousands of people across that state's central west have been ordered to evacuate as flooding spreads across large parts of the region. The State Emergency Service has issued an emergency warning to move to higher ground for Molong, Eugowra and low-lying areas of Canowindra, with flash flooding causing renewed river level rises. Dubbo residents are also bracing for rising river levels, with the Western Plains Tourist Park already told to prepare to evacuate. Matthew Dickerson is the Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council. He joins us now. Councillor, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, Glenn.
I understand you've been receiving an update from authorities in the last hour or so. What have they been telling you?
Yeah, they're telling us bad news. Unfortunately, it really is just about that river rising. It'll reach about 5.5 metres this afternoon. Now, that's not too bad. Where it becomes critical for us in Dubbo is at 7.4 metres. Now, at this stage, the latest information we've gotten from authorities is that it will probably get to 7.4 metres some stage tomorrow morning. At that level, our second river crossing closes, and that's on the Newell Highway. And when that happens, and it happened twice in October, hadn't happened before October this year, and the previous time was 2010, so it's been a long time since it's closed. But when it did happen for those 2 days in October, the queues to get across our other bridge, our main bridge, were back around 4, even 5 kilometres. Now, that's a long way for people in a rural area to queue up to get across a bridge. We're a bit frustrated if we have to queue up for 4 metres, not 4 kilometres.
Indeed. Now, we mentioned the tourist park being told to prepare to evacuate. What other parts of the region might be most at risk from all of this floodwater?
Yeah, that tourist park was actually, they started the evacuation just a little while ago there. And probably the other part is you've got an area along the back of the Dubbo CBD where all your main businesses are sitting. Now, the fronts of those shops aren't affected. The main street of Dubbo is pretty good in terms of its flood level, but the back entrances to those where a lot of the stock comes in, a lot of car parking is, all that will be shut down as well at some stage later on this afternoon if the predictions go the way they're expected to go at the moment. So that has a bit of disruption there for the central business district. It certainly makes it difficult for some of those businesses to remain open and trading if they can't get stock, for example, or customers can't park there. You also have an issue with 2 of the main shopping centres in the CBD. Again, it impacts their car parking, so it's hard for shoppers to come and park there. So at this stage, the really fortunate thing about Dubbo is that the way it's been designed, and nothing to do with this current council, we're going back many decades or even further, you're talking about a CBD that's actually not too bad. That tourist park that you mentioned, the caravan park, is one thing that's down in that flood area. But mostly for housing and for businesses, we sit up a high enough level that we're okay when these sort of level of floods come through. It's really that Newell Highway, which is the main impact, but then that really brings Dubbo to a bit of a standstill, a bit of a gridlock.
And like many other places around New South Wales, it's been a bit of a wretched year on the flood front. Dubbo experienced a couple of floods in as many months. How are residents feeling at the moment?
I think we're pretty resilient. I think regional people are pretty resilient in general. When you've gone through a drought and bushfires and mice plague and then floods, well, you just kind of think that's normal for people in regional areas. You just seem to pop up with different things. It is pretty tough to keep taking it though, and it's amazing how much it affects little things. We've got 2 of our pedestrian bridges across our river that are part of a walking track and a cycling track. They've been closed now for a couple of months. Believe it or not, that's probably more frustrating to people than some of the other closures because it just means it impacts people's day-to-day life. They can't get out and do some of their daily exercise. So some of those things become frustrating when they're closed for so long. We've got a really successful park run in Dubbo, high participation park run. They've had to use an alternative course for about 4 months now. So it just gives you an idea. When you see those floodwaters come through, you normally expect them to be for short periods of time, not for months on end.
Do you have enough support and help? I see one of your cohorts, local mayors suggesting resources are pretty stretched as a result of all these ongoing weather events. Should authorities be looking for more overseas support?
I'm always happy to take more help. We have got a very successful relationship with the SES, even with the Rural Fire Service. They pitch in and help when needed. The police obviously are great and our staff do a great job. When we've had those 2 closures, for example, of our Newell Highway crossing of the river, each time they were only closed for one time just under a day, the other time just over a day. And part of the reason we could get it open so quickly was because we had help from those other agencies. If it was left up to council by ourselves, it would have been closed for several days because we just don't have the manpower to get in and clean up those roads to let traffic start flowing again. So I think our staff have done a fantastic job, but working with those other agencies, that's been a really successful process. So yes, that help's been fantastic. Again, I'll never say no to more help. But at this stage, because we're not having to evacuate people, it's really the roads that we've been mainly focused on. That's made it a little bit easier for us, and I can imagine a bit tougher for some of those other places. And I do talk to some of those other mayors, and I do feel for them because it is pretty tough when you've got to evacuate hundreds of people from houses or hundreds of houses.
No doubt about that. Councillor, let's wish you luck for what happens in the days to come. Thanks for joining us today.
No, my pleasure, Glenn. Thank you.
Matthew Dickerson, the Mayor of the Dubbo Regional Council, nervously awaiting to see what happens with the floodwater as it heads in his direction. Meanwhile, it's happening elsewhere too. Victorian emergency crews are continuing to respond to calls for assistance after heavy rain and thunderstorms caused flash flooding across that state. The SES receiving more than 650 calls for help, many of those along the Mornington Peninsula, even places like Tremarna and Hastings affected this time.